Welcome back to the Coffee Chat, etc. podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Cox, and today I'm joined by the incredible Amy Gould, lead singer of the melodic metal band Eden on Fire, songwriter, survivor, and passionate advocate for healing through music. In this really powerful episode, Amy shares her deeply personal story of surviving more than 2 decades of coercive control, emotional and domestic abuse, and how she found the courage to reclaim not only her life, but also her voice. Through music, resilience, and hope, Amy has transformed unimaginable pain into purpose, inspiring others to believe that it's never too late to begin again. But before we begin, please note that this episode contains discussions around sensitive topics, which some listeners may find distressing. So please take care of yourself and seek support from a trusted friend or professional if anything in this conversation affects you. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's start. Hi, and welcome, Amy. You're from Erie all the way to Pennsylvania. I'm glad I didn't say it the opposite way around. So welcome today, Amy. How are you?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. You're very
cold
welcome.
in Erie, Pennsylvania this morning for May, but
Oh, is it? Yeah, well, it's the same in Spain, actually. It's quite cold over here at the moment. Yeah, unheard of, but yeah, we'll survive.
Yeah, it'll be summer soon.
We keep holding on to that. So, Amy, you've got a really inspirational story, and you've been through quite a lot as well. We've discussed it very, very briefly beforehand, and I'd just like to explore that more with you today, if that's okay, about obviously a music career that you had and where your trajectory or your direction was changed along the way. So where do you want to start from?
So I will give the high level overview, I guess. I am a musician. I'm a female metal singer, also classically trained. So I've been doing the gamut of music my whole life pretty much. But in my late teens, I started getting into the rock music and into bands and fronting metal bands in my early 20s. So I was kind of on this trajectory. I was in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area at the time, and I was starting to make a name for myself a little bit. I wasn't huge. Nobody really, it was a big pond, little fish.
Sure.
But I was kind of on my way. Things were starting to move. Each band that I was in started to get a little bit more progress. And I started doing a lot of the writing in the terms of, it was all original music. So I was starting to write the lyrics and the vocal lines in the songs. And
wow. How old were you then, Amy?
I was in my very early 20s. I want to say started at about 18, and then I was probably about 23 when I stopped doing it. Around 24, maybe 24.
Sure.
I met my ex-husband, and that's really took a big turn and a change in my life.
Okay.
So he was another musician, friends with a band that I was in. We got to know each other. I had been engaged to somebody else previously. It was not a bad situation, but it was just, we weren't right for each other. So after a few years, we broke up. I was devastated, and I was a young girl thinking this was it, and
Sure.
My ex-husband kind of swooped in. Now, he had known me for a while. He had gotten to know pretty much everything about me because I was really close friends with the guys in my band, and he was friends with them. And so a lot of times he hung out with us.
Sure.
When I first met him, I was like, I don't like this guy. He's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I think we all have those moments.
Yeah. And so I kind of had that in my head. And then all of a sudden he started to change around me. And this is when I was kind of vulnerable after being in this relationship that I thought was going to be a marriage and didn't work out. And he kind of started to court me, I guess you would say. And all of a sudden, here was this guy who I thought was a total jerk, who seemed to be almost like my Prince Charming.
Okay.
So we started to date. I mean, I can remember our first date. It was like everything that I loved, he loved. And it was like ridiculous, like the amounts of things that we had in common. I was like, who are you? Because I would have never seen that from you before. So it was confusing, but at the same time, it was awesome. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this guy. I'm a big Disney fan. I'm a big Disney junkie. I love to go to Disney World and things like that. And so he's like, oh, I love all the Disney. I love all those movies. And I was like, really? Because that's not normal that you hear from guys at our age, Just things like that. Right away, it was like this whirlwind romance. I think it was probably a month, and he asked me to marry him.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like smart enough at that time, I guess, to know that wasn't right,
Hmm.
but not smart enough to know what a predator looks like.
Oh, okay.
So I did put him off. I remember calling one of my best friends at the time and saying, "Hey, what do I do? What do I do?" He wants to like get in the car and drive to one of these states that just allows you to walk in and get married. And and I'm like, I know I love him. I know he's the one. And she was like,
Yeah.
if he's the one, he'll still be the one in 6 months, and I'm like, you're right. You're right. So I said, no, not now. And so, but the romance just continued. And as it went on, he started working on me and turning and pitting my band against me. So he didn't want them to know that I was dating him. He didn't want, and he said, it's going to make them angry and all these things. And so it put me in this really awkward triangle
Of
situation, where
course.
I couldn't be myself around my bandmates, and it was getting very awkward. I was having to lie, and that's not me. I don't like to lie. And so we got to the point where I said to him, like, I can't keep doing this. I'm not going to keep hiding this. They're my best friends too. I've been with these guys for how long, and we're like a family,
Yeah.
and so he says, well, don't you tell them, because I was their friend first. Let me tell them. And I was like, okay, well, it takes the heat off me a little bit. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he went and supposedly had this meeting with them, and supposedly they got really, really angry, and
Okay.
yeah, and it just got very awkward. And so I just quit.
Oh, and had they got angry? Do you know if they had got angry or not?
They did not. Um,
Right. Okay.
yeah, I think, I've actually reconnected with the guitar player from that band recently, and we've talked a little bit. He was just pitting us against each other. His goal was to pretty much take me away from all of it.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
you know, you know, 2020 hindsight, I now know he is
Sure.
somebody with actual narcissistic personality disorder and also antisocial personality disorder. He got diagnosed with both of those in our marriage time.
Wow.
And so he's like basically for all intents and purposes a sociopath. But I had never met anybody like that in my life. So I had no idea. It blindsided me because they come in like you're Prince Charming and
Yeah.
sweep you off your feet, and it's this whirlwind romance, and before you know it, you're in so deep you don't even know that you're in it anymore. So anyway, I ended up dropping out of that band. I did try to be in another band for a short period of time after that, and every time I would go to rehearsals and things like that, I'd come back and tell him what it was like, and he would work on me and try to convince me that they weren't appreciating me or it wasn't good enough.
Right.
There was something wrong with the situation, so that I would be like, yeah, and it started to be stressful for me because I'm thinking, yeah, he's right. I'm probably not being treated right. Yeah, they're probably going to just dump me anyway. He worked on my
Oh,
self-esteem.
gosh.
Meanwhile, he was working on my self-esteem all around. I started out when I came into that, other than being fragile from a breakup, I was actually very self-assured. And I just completely changed. He started to criticize my looks. Like I can remember him telling me, yeah, I almost didn't date you because I don't like your chin. And I'm like, what's
Oh,
wrong with my
gosh.
chin? He's like, well,
Yeah.
it's just pointy and it's weird. And, but one of my friends told me I was being too shallow, so I can overlook that now. And I'm like,
Right.
oh my
Okay.
gosh, like, so I started to worry
Yeah.
about what I looked like, and I just lost all sense of self in this
Yeah.
relationship. So
It
after that,
sounds like,
yeah.
sorry, Amy, I was
Oh, you're
just going
good.
to say, just going back to that, because narcissism is thrown around a lot nowadays on social media,
Yeah.
etc. But it sounds like and I'm not a therapist, and I will just disclaim that now, but it sounds like he love bombed you for that month and mirrored your behavior in order to get you to connect, because obviously you were connecting on a level where he was basically copying your behavior.
Right. Exactly. You nailed it.
And then the chipping away, the dismissive, and the kind of trying to get you away from anybody that could support you. Yeah, it sounds awful. How were you feeling at that time then?
At the time, I was feeling very burnt out. I remember feeling
Okay.
like this music career just isn't for me. It's too stressful, burning me out. I can't seem to make any headway with it. But gosh, at least I have this really awesome relationship.
Right.
So I was, he was sweeping, he was helping clean up the broken pieces of my career by pulling me out of the career and then making it seem like he's my savior. So
Of course.
at the time, I felt supported by him in a really strange, odd way, even though I was getting no support from him whatsoever. It seemed
Yeah.
like I was. And then it it just kept going from there. I completely gave up music. Like I did
Oh
nothing.
no.
And I will tell, people a lot of times in interviews, music is part of who I am. It's like my identity. And I don't go a day without picking up some sort of instrument
Yeah.
and doing something or singing or something. And I did then. Just completely fell out of it. I got real career focused. I was working a day job at a medical software company, and I got really involved in that, and I became sort of just work focused and then relationship focused. And it was always about making sure he had everything he needed. And I'm
Yeah.
a caretaker by
Yeah.
default. And so it just became my life taking care of him.
Right.
And then somewhere along the lines, he started working on me about becoming a mother. And I never had any intentions. In fact, when people found out that knew me from my earlier life that I was pregnant or going to be a mom, they were like, "What? How'd that happen?" And I'm like, "Well, it was planned, And they're like, "You?" Because I had this idea. I want to be an artist. This is what I want. My career would have been my life.
Yeah.
I love doing the music stuff so much that isn't like, oh, I'm a workaholic. It's no, this is what makes me me. And
Sure.
I saw that as like becoming a parent is an okay thing, but I had other things in mind that I wanted to do. And I knew I couldn't be a good mom and do these things. So
Right.
he
So
talked me
something
into
had to
it
give.
somehow. He got me believing that I was the one. And so we tried and got pregnant pretty quickly. And I don't regret it. I love my son. My son's amazing.
Yeah.
But I became basically a mother and a caretaker to him. Somewhere in my son's, a little bit older, getting to be preschool age, I fell upon a local chorus in our town where I could maybe have as an outlet. And he fought me on auditioning
Oh,
for it because he didn't want me not being home all the time to take care of the kid. So I
yeah.
actually worked from home all those years. Like I was working full time raising my son, who actually turns out to be on the autism spectrum, which is a whole nother story. But um, so it was challenging, and I was working full time, and I was raising my son, but I had no outlet. Like I had nothing. Well, I did. I just there was still part of me in there that was still me. And I was like, I don't care what you think. I'm going to go audition for this chorus. And I got in and I was with them for quite a few years, but it was always very challenging. So it was a
Yeah.
classical situation. I actually was a soloist there and it was awesome. I really enjoyed my time there.
Amazing. Yeah.
He started making that difficult to the point where using our son as triangulation. And
Okay.
so by doing that, he would, make my son's life difficult. He's on the spectrum. So sometimes that would make it even more difficult with behaviors. And I would end up having to leave rehearsals or having to not even do a concert because of things. And
Yeah.
it made it just so hard. So
From
that's
the understanding of, sorry, from the understanding of the triangulation, that it makes you the perpetrator at times, him the victim,
yes.
and then you've got the coach as well. So at that time, what was he pitting you for? Were you the perpetrator? You were the one leaving your son? You were the one that was abandoning? What kind of was he saying to you at that time?
Basically what he was doing is he was kind of harming our son. And without me kind of knowing that it was happening, he was psychologically doing it a lot of the times and then causing my son's behaviors to be so severe that I needed to intervene.
Wow.
And a lot of
Okay.
times I was sort of the buffer between the two of them. And a
So he
lot of
was the
times,
perpetrator.
yes, he was the perpetrator for sure. And he would cause behaviors in my son, which would cause my son's behaviors to become aggressive. And I would get in the middle of this, of
Be
a
the
grown
peacemaker.
adult and a child trying to stop this. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I had to be there as a peacemaker all the time. And that became my role.
That's hard.
Yeah. So
Really hard for
I
you.
still tried to do things here and there. I did a little bit of like theater, local community theater, musical theater, trying to just something, every once in a while I'd get a night out with some girlfriends and would go do karaoke and I'd go do it.
Mhm.
And they'd be like, "Who are you?" I've been singing classical with them, and I'd pick it up, I'm a metal singer.
That's
Rock and
mad.
metal's my thing. And they were like,
Yeah.
"Who are you? Wow, you can do all these things." And I'm like, this is, I was supposed to be at one time in my life, but reality check, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So you kept pushing it down.
Yeah, I just convinced myself that all of that was my choice.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
so I really, and And during this entire time frame, I guess I got to go back a little bit. When I was young, very young, I started writing music at the piano when I was probably like 8 or 9 years old.
That's incredible.
Thank you. I mean, it was goofy little songs, but, and then by the time I was an early teen, they were all like, my boyfriend broke up with me songs, you know? Um,
Of course.
but yeah, I actually have one song that I still remember how to play. And I actually had somebody actually learn how to play it in school because they thought it was so awesome. And, it actually isn't a bad song. It's a little bit of a, you know, I don't know, teenage love drama song, but
Yeah.
well, I'm proud of the orchestration of it.
Maybe you should release it, Amy. Maybe this is your
Maybe
sign
someday
to
that
get
would
it
be
out
fun.
there.
Like my little side project, Amy's old music from when she was 12.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure there's some teenagers out there that need it.
Yeah. It's probably a little different than what they're listening to today, but
Probably.
yeah. But anyway, so I was writing all that time, and then when I got into this marriage, I had complete writer's block. I couldn't write. And I remember sitting at my piano and I just didn't know what to do. I'd try to like get some sheet music maybe and learn how to play something, but I just had I don't know what way, like no energy or whatever it was. The motivation wasn't there. And so it
Yeah.
just got sidelined for all those years. And it was a lot of years. I was in that marriage for over 20 years.
Wow.
So it was a very long time.
Yeah.
And at the end, thankfully, probably the last 5 years of it, I knew what was happening to me finally. But
Okay.
damage done, unfortunately.
And that's the start of the awakening, isn't it? I think when you start seeing the red flags and questioning things as well. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what your marriage looked like, Amy, but I'm guessing that it wasn't happy
Yeah.
towards the end. And maybe you realized through your son. I mean, at the end of the day, what was it that woke you up and went, that's it, I can't do this anymore?
That's exactly it. He had a way of manipulating emotionally. And he
Okay.
was very, really good at crocodile tears and feigning empathy. And one time, though, you can see through the cracks sometimes, but when it's happening to you, it's harder. But when you
Yeah.
see it as a third person and you see it happening to your child, and all of a sudden that mask came off of him. And I went,
Right.
this is not what I thought it was. And now it's all making perfect sense. I can remember I'm still going through all these things where he's being angry. He used anger to control us. And, I remember it just being really awful. And I thought, I wonder if I'm being abused. And it just kind of popped in my head that maybe his behaviors were abusive. I mean, he'd had some hospitalizations. We'd had police at our
Oh,
home.
wow.
I literally, not to get too graphic, but when we moved out of that home, before we moved out of the home, my son and I were living there alone there at the end. I painted the walls in the hallway because there was literal blood stains on our walls. Like it was just
Wow.
horrific, everything that happened there.
So there was physical abuse there?
Yes, there was every type of abuse
Ugh.
that you can add
I'm
to it.
really sorry to hear that, Amy,
Thank you.
because nobody should have to go through that.
Thank you. So anyway, but I think I lost my train of thought with the painting the walls thing.
Yeah.
So starting to realize that there might be abuse here, I went online and I just Googled like abuse, and the abuse hotline in the United States came up. And I was like, I don't want to call this, but they had like a chat, like a chat window online that you could do. And I thought, oh my God, like I was sitting out, I remember with the laptop sitting out on our patio. He wasn't home, but I was like so nervous, like to do this.
Yeah.
And I opened a chat and I said, I'm just trying to figure out like if I'm being abused or not. And so they were really, really nice and helpful. And I just gave them a high level overview, like not even, because at the time, most of the abuse that was physical was directed at our son, but there was some at me. But
Okay.
so it was confusing for me because I didn't know about emotional abuse at that point.
Yeah.
So the mental abuse, which apparently can be just as bad, if not worse sometimes.
I was just going to say, I think it's worse, the mental abuse, because the minimization of their behavior ends up transcending onto you. So you minimize, make excuses, and your brain goes, oh, yeah, this isn't abuse. This is just normal anger, or this is normal family, or normal relationships. And it's not at all.
Right. Yeah. And it also makes you feel like, there's something I knew there was something wrong with him, but my empathy kicked in and I was like, he just needs help. So I became on a mission to try to get him the right kind of help to help him be a better person.
The rescuer.
Yeah. And of course, he didn't want the help, it wasn't a matter of him like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I was this person. I need to do better. It was like, no, I'm doing these things because it gets me what I want.
Yeah.
And so, but I spent a lot of time with like, making sure he had psychological appointments and psychiatry appointments. And years later, I found like it was like a tackle box full of pills. He never took them.
Oh,
He hid them.
no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It was all just a big facade. But yeah, I got on there and they were like, yeah, you're absolutely being abused. We
Yeah.
want to put you in touch with our local agency. And they brought up the information. They're like, please give them a call. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go. There's no way I'm being abused that bad that I need to call our local abuse agency.
Oh, wow.
So it took me a little while and things kept, as things do, sort of when you start to push things and you start to push back a little bit, they get worse. And so finally I did call them, and it was probably a couple months later, and they were like, we really like for you to come down here and your
Yeah.
son too, and have a meeting. It's, we will do this secretively. He doesn't have to know that you're doing it. It's very discreet. We're back in this little plaza. Nobody will even know you're there. Meanwhile, I have a fire orange Prius, so I'm like, my car.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
we're
going to
gonna
get
know
spotted.
where I am at all times. So, but luckily it was like in this area that like, your car's not even, nobody's gonna notice it.
Yeah.
But my son wasn't ready to do anything. So I went myself and I started seeing basically a therapist there, social worker, who
Yeah.
I would go and get therapy weekly with her. And we would talk about what my options were. And at the time, I really needed a protective, what do you call it? A protective
Figure.
thing from, yeah. They called it like a protection from abuse thing
Yeah.
through the court system.
Right. Okay.
But in our state, in the US here, everything's sort of, each state has their own laws about all these things. There is no protection for emotional abuse. The only types of protection you can get are for physical or sexual violence. And you have to be able to pretty much prove that that's happening to you. So what they will do is they'll give you a protection that's temporary until you get to court, and then a judge will decide whether or not there's evidence for this protective order. And it is kind of a serious thing when you get one of these, because it actually bans the person from the home.
Yeah.
They're not allowed on the property, even if they own the home, it doesn't matter. And then it goes on their record, a criminal record. So
And
they
so it
were
should.
counseling me and saying, you really need one of these, but we're going to be honest with you about it. They don't often give them for emotional abuse. And I was
Right.
like, okay. And at the time, my
Mm.
son was still underage, so he was considered a child. I
Yeah.
was terrified about that. I was worried that they would say, this doesn't happen. You're not being abused. And now he knows that I've done this. And now he knows that I'm seeking help. And
Okay.
he's going to take my son, and I'm not going to be able to save my son, So that was terrifying for me. I was so afraid to do it. So I didn't. So I started just kind of working on him at home. I had at that point cut off any type of physical relations with him.
Yeah.
And I was just, they call it gray rock method in abuse, where you just become so boring to them that they have nothing to fight with.
Oh, okay. I've not heard of that before, but that's
Yeah, it's for
interesting.
people who are kind of stuck in situations, especially like custody situations with their ex-abusers. It's a method that they use because they're always trying to get you to be reactive. And
Yeah.
so you just stop being reactive. You start
Yeah.
just being a matter of fact about things, almost like a robot with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I started being more like that with him. But in the meantime, it was getting kicked up because he was seeing that I saw through things and taking it
You've
out.
been found out.
Yeah, and taking it out more on our son. It took me 5 years to get out of that at that
Wow.
point.
How old was your son at that time, Amy? And what impact was your husband's behavior having on him?
It's terrible what my son has had to endure. So he was at the time when we finally got out, he was 18.
Right. Okay.
But prior to that, he was about, 16 or so, even, I guess about from 14 to about 18.
Yeah.
That area of time was when we were really getting worse. Like I actually kicked him out of the house. At one point he stayed at a local like motel down the street for a month, but he love bombed me again. He came and
Yeah.
sat on the back patio with me and cried crocodile tears and
Sure.
promised, it would be different, that he knew that there was something wrong with him and he was getting more help. And all these things and told me all the things that I wanted to hear.
And it's so easy to believe.
Yeah, especially
So
when
easy to believe.
yeah, especially when you're like, okay, you're trying not to break up the family and you're trying to make sure figure out what is best for your child and probably everything for me, I didn't even care about me anymore. It was just trying to save my kid. And
Yeah.
I let him back in and it got 100% worse. Like
Wow.
the next day he moved back in and it was just worse abuse, breaking things and throwing things. At one point I actually started to be concerned because our pets were sick a lot. We had cats and
Right.
we lost a cat due to a bleeding ulcer in his stomach and nobody ever knew what caused it.
Okay.
But we had all these time, like all of a sudden our cats would just start vomiting and vomiting up blood. And I just didn't know what was going on. We were at the vets all the time and the vets were like, we have no idea what's causing this. So they kept putting the cats on medications to try to help it. It wasn't helping. And then my ex-husband went away for a weekend and the cats were fine. And
Oh
then he came
no.
home and the cats
Right.
immediately were sick again.
Right.
So
Okay.
he was poisoning our pets. We finally found that out.
No.
And he said, there's no way I'm doing that, and I confronted him because, my cats are my babies too. So
Sure. Sure.
he agreed to it. We installed cameras in the house so that he could prove he wasn't doing it. Well, he
Right.
manipulated those too. So anyway, but I had, a couple times he lost it, angrily. And I had some pretty violent stuff on recording or he picked up
Right.
a
Okay.
chair and he went to go take a kitchen chair or a dining room chair and he was gonna hit my son with it, and I got my son out of the way,
Yeah.
and he broke, like, a chandelier. I mean, it was just insane. So I got stuff like
Yeah.
that on camera, so when we finally, after all that, I'm still getting counseling from these agencies, and they were like, "You probably have enough between what you're telling me that's happening to your son. If nothing else, he has enough." And so he
Yeah.
was 18 at the time. As an adult, he could also get a protective order.
Fantastic.
So we finally did it.
Yeah.
And that was just the turning point of my life getting better. It became
Can I just ask, Amy, when you left, because I know that in my mind you'd be like, yay, I'm leaving, that's it, over. Did you crash though? And did you have that grieving period?
it's interesting because I didn't have a grieving period, so to speak. He actually not long into the protective order started to stalk us.
Oh
I mean,
no.
there's
Yeah.
just a lot of things that were going on. So I didn't really have a lot of downtime. Interestingly enough, I look back now and I know my initial gut instincts about him were right, and I never loved him. And I thought
Right.
I was so deep in love with this man, I would
Yeah.
have done anything for him. But I now look back and I was like, that never felt like love, actually. And when I got out, I was relieved. There was no
Yeah.
sense of, oh my gosh, I love him so much. I just want to call him again. I was just done because there
Yeah.
wasn't love. It was just manipulation for all those years. The love I had was for my son, and that was it.
And
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah, and I started to, try to figure now that not to say that I snapped out of it and was like, "Wow, everything's great." It wasn't. Um,
No.
Even after we got protective orders and things, he still continued to terrorize us indirectly without being able to get caught. And there's just so much. We found out later that he probably was poisoning our son at one point because our son had a lot of health issues and they could never quite pinpoint. And some lab results came back a little weird that his pediatrician picked up on, and we could never pinpoint it. And now we look back
Yeah.
and go, oh, well, that's probably what's happening right there. So there was all those things, and it was just great to get out of that. But that was in 2018. And so I was still trying to still recover. It's like being sick for 20 years,
Mm.
and trying to start to feel like a human again. I didn't even know how to be me anymore. I didn't know who me was anymore.
Yeah.
And, I was doing I still do therapy today, but I was doing therapy and trying to, figure it all out. And then one day I looked at my piano and it's all dusty and I hadn't touched it in forever. And there was a notebook sitting there because a couple times I sat down and tried to write and I just couldn't. But I had a
Yeah.
couple chords written down and I was like, there must be something here. So I just started to I call it noodling around on the piano. And all of a sudden this writing surge came back. It was like,
Wow.
it was amazing. It was like that flow that you hear about where people don't even know how they're doing it. It just happens. Like, it's like almost like
Yeah.
something's writing through you. And I just wrote so many songs. They just came one right after another, right after another. And I was like, that was my therapy. Like, I'm getting therapy, but this was the big therapy. This was the one that I needed.
Yeah.
And I found out who I was again. And I had all this music. And I'm like, I need to do something with this. Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be in a band. That's what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And my son's old enough now, so I can do these things. And so then the pandemic hit.
Oh no. Oh dear.
But it was okay because it gave me even more time to sit and write. And a lot of the songs that I wrote in my band now were born out of that. But, of course, at the time, I had no access to people other than online. So Facebook was sort of my everybody's at that point way of communicating. And I met my partner now during the pandemic online.
Oh wow.
We had gone to grade school together and we didn't really know each other, but he saw that I was friends with a whole lot of musician friends from the same town that we, were from. And he's like, do I know her? And, that was his in to kind of flirt with me.
Oh yeah.
And so, he's a musician as well. And so we just started talking. And so we did Zoom dates for a while during
Excellent.
the pandemic and finally met up. And, we actually hit it off really well together. And he was, telling me he was a bass player, musician. And I'm like, okay, well, I got all this music. I want to put a band together. And at the time I'm thinking, like, I've never seen you play bass. I don't know if you can play bass. It's kind of a funny side story. But eventually.
Can he play bass?
Yes, he does. He is actually the bass player in my band. So,
Oh, amazing. There you
yeah,
go.
we sort of started the whole band together. But yeah, it was a little frightening because I thought, oh gosh, now I'm in deep with this guy,
Yeah.
and what if he's terrible? I'm going to have to say, no, you can't be in my band. So
Yeah,
thankfully
we're
he's really
breaking up.
good. But yeah, I mean, so I met him and like, I finally found out what love actually was. It was
amazing.
wonderful. Somebody who built me up instead of tearing me down. And not to say we haven't had our issues. I mean, there's been a lot of things that we've been through together as a couple and still continue to go through today. But it was the night and day of somebody treating me like I mattered and I felt beautiful for the first time in 20 some years. Like I always thought that I was like really not attractive. And because he had just destroyed every ounce of self-esteem that I had, I knew the only thing that I ever was able to hold on to was that I was a good singer because I was still doing some of that, all during marriage. But everything else kind of fell back into place. I started to feel like a sexy woman again,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was sort of the turning point. And I started looking for band members. So that's where the story sort of comes and brings us to where I'm at today.
That's amazing. And do you know something? It sounds like you were broken down by this man and you come across now, Amy, as very, very confident. So I can imagine what you were like before you'd met him.
Yeah.
But it seemed that music just kept pulling you through. That time for yourself, that connection that you had, which was still that part of you.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of kept with you. And now that suppression of the emotions and that kind of suppression of you, now that's gone. It's all come back again, which is just amazing. And, you've met somebody as well that's got something in common. And I think that's the main thing is that he's supporting you. He's holding you up rather than pushing you down. So, yeah. And you look amazing. You're very attractive and your hair is amazing. I'm tempted to get the blue and the red. I know the audience won't be able to see it, but it is really beautiful. So,
here I am in, my later life here and I decided, what the heck? I still have life to live. And there's times where I'm really resentful and I look back and I'm like, I want those years back. I want to be that age again. I want my body to be that age again. I want my mind where it is now. I don't want to give up what I know. That's important. But I would love to have my 25-year-old body back.
We all would, Amy.
And just even for stamina purposes and things like that, No arthritic pain, please. That would be great. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel very blessed, I guess, that I'm where I am today. I had no idea what would happen. I guess we haven't really talked about it, but my band is called Eden on Fire, and we're a metal band that's up and coming. in the industry.
Amazing.
So we're starting to make a name for ourselves. I said I got together, Scott's my partner, the bass player in the band, and we found the right people for the beginning. They weren't exactly the right people in the end. A couple people have left and
Okay,
we've replaced, and now I think we have really, really good people. But
great.
we started writing, and I brought all these tunes that I'd written during the pandemic and prior to that, and revised them, and that became like our first album. And
Oh, wow. And what's your album called?
it's called Unresolved.
Wow. And is that part of your life prior to bringing the band together again? Is that about your relationship?
Yeah, so I would say
Wow.
90% of that album is. Some of it's about things that I was dealing with because of being in that relationship. Like we have a song called Wake the Monster, and that's about me being
Oh,
triggered. And
right.
so after all this, I do have, PTSD, and I would say it's resolving now, but I came
Yeah.
out of that relationship with it severely. And of course, when you get into a new relationship, I mean, it was 2 years before I got into a relationship again. So I gave myself a lot of breathing time. I was not ready. I actually
Yeah.
thought at one point that I was just done with ever having those kind of feelings again because I was
Yeah.
just so damaged from that relationship. But you heal, and
Yes, you
eventually
do.
that all comes back. But yeah, so when you get into that new relationship, you have no idea what is going to happen when somebody does something, or he says a word or something that he doesn't think, doesn't know that it's a problem for me, and I don't know it's a problem for me until it happens. So yeah. So anyway, we have songs like that on there. There's a couple songs where, Scott and I had some moments, and, I that's how I process. So when I'm upset about something, I sit down at the piano typically, but now I play a little guitar. So I'll sit down with the guitar and I just start scribbling lyrics and writing. And that's how I process everything.
And that's amazing.
Thank you. That's why, it's interesting. I always joke with people, don't upset me or you're going to end up in a song because it's going to happen. It's really what happens. It's just exactly what I do. It's just how I get through everything. And like we have a song that we just released a week ago, and it's an angry song about stuff that I've dealt with in the music scene. And so
Right.
I was really mad one night. I came home and I was like, "Oh, this song," and it just came out, and I actually wrote the guitar riff for it and everything. And I think it's going to be one of our best songs we've done so far.
Oh, wow.
So
Amazing.
yeah, it's doing quite well. So, but yeah, so the first album though, I would say most of it, I have a song called Fallen. That was our first release, and it's our only ballad that we have so far. And it's very dark. It is about that time in my life where I was at the end. I was on
Right.
the verge, trigger warning. But
Yes.
I
Yes.
did have a suicide attempt during all of that.
Gosh.
He actually caught me mid of that and waited a few minutes until I was passing out. And I remember seeing the smirk on his face before that happened. And then
Oh,
he got me help. So yeah,
I
so that
was
kind of
going to
stuff.
actually ask you, sorry, Amy,
That's
what
okay.
was the lowest point? But I think you've just answered my
That was
question.
it. Yeah, that was it, where he was torturing our son so badly and I couldn't protect him. And I just felt like a total failure as a human being. And I just wanted it to stop. I just wanted all the noise to stop, all the pain, all the everything to stop. And of course, I wasn't thinking clearly about like, well, what about my son? I just
Of
needed it to
course.
stop at that moment. And that was Fallen is actually about that. And
Oh, okay.
it's interesting because we released that as our first release in the band. We did singles a little bit before we released the album, and it was our first single. And it was kind of a risky one because we're a metal band. We're melodic, so we're kind of old school metal. We're not some of today's like hardcore. But we had a radio station that heard us play it live, and they were like, "We hope that you have this song available for us." And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't going to be the one that's available, but we'll make that happen to get it on the radio." So we did,
Great.
and it became a
Great.
hit, like, here locally, and
Wow.
we quite a good airplay with it out in the world, and it's still getting played. But I've had so many people come up to me and say, "Oh my gosh, Fallen, I relate so strong to that song." And I'm like, "Don't relate to that song.
Oh,
It's terrible.
gosh. Yeah.
It's a terrible
Because you
moment."
know the situation you're in.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
I get so
Oh,
many
wow.
people have been at that point in their life. Maybe, it's not like it blatantly calls out suicide in the song, but it talks about my mental state at that time, where I was. I wrote it introspectively, so it was after the fact, years later. I wrote it, during the pandemic, which my ex had been gone for several years. But I told my mom, I was like, "Hey, just so you know, I don't feel like this now when you hear this song." That was how I was then. But yeah, so there's some pretty dark stuff on there. That's the darkest, and it's interesting because it's the ballad and it's the one that's probably got the most airplay of all her songs to date.
Wow. So your pain went to somebody else's gain at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
that's
how incredible is that? Sharing your story through music and for
yeah.
others to be able to relate to that and for it to help them as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think that's why our formula is working so well with our music. I don't write for other people. I write for my own therapy. And so when lyrics come out, I'm not thinking about, well, what kind of hook is this? And, is this going to resonate with this age group? And, I'm not thinking about any of that.
Yeah,
I'm just, what am I feeling? And what do I hear as I'm feeling it? And that's how I write. So, and
great.
it's become very relatable, I guess. And that was a little aspect I wasn't expecting.
A gift.
Sorry. I was going to say the other part of all of this was prior to, meeting my ex-husband, I was in bands and I was writing lyrics and vocal lines, but I wasn't writing the music. Even though I could do it, I'd been doing it as a child. I never had the confidence to do that. I was young and still kind of finding out who I was still when all that hit me. So when I came out, it was a very vulnerable thing to do. I was really nervous about actually taking these songs to the band. And every time for the first couple years, I would write something new and I'd bring it to the band. I got this ball of anxiety in my stomach, like, I want
Yeah,
to play this and they're going to be like, what are you thinking? Like, it's not metal. We can't make that metal, like this is stupid. And they didn't. They were always like, okay, we can work with this. Let's go and let's take, and I'm like,
yeah,
like, oh my gosh, I'm a songwriter. I got that confidence that I didn't have before. So in some ways, I wouldn't go back and ever do that experience again, but it has made me who I am today. And I
yeah.
am using what I learned from that to hopefully make the world a better place. I don't know. That sounds cheesy. I want
No,
to
not
help
at
people
all.
too. I get, savior complex, I guess. I want people to be happy and healthy. If I see a woman going through what I went through, I'm like right away, you pick up on it pretty quick now as a victim. I want to help people. So if my music helps one person get out of one of those situations, then I feel like mission accomplished. I can die
Yeah,
happy.
amazing. And how's your son getting on now, Amy?
He's starting to heal. He
Fab.
was much more severely affected just because when I was already in my 20s and kind of knew who I was starting to become when it happened, he spent his entire life until he was an adult in the mission. He developed some pretty severe mental health issues that are very complex. He's also autistic, so he's on the autism spectrum,
Yes.
which made it harder for him to get the right kind of therapy to help him. So, we actually, one of the things when he got diagnosed as a child with the autism, I reached out to everywhere I could to try to learn as much as I could about it. And what I learned was, he's not broken. That's not a problem. He's neurologically different. So
Yes.
we celebrate neurodiversity here. And
Fabulous.
yeah. And so sometimes, his autistic brain is much more sophisticated than mine. I'm not neurotypical either, though. I make ADHD, so I'm all over the place. You can
Yeah.
probably tell by the way I talk. Um,
No, not at all.
but that did actually make it way more difficult to find somebody who knows how to work with an autistic brain and
Yeah,
trauma. So
of
he's got a
course.
really good fit right now, and he's starting to kind of come out of it a little bit, but it's been a long haul for him. He's definitely had it harder than I have. So we're getting there, but by little.
And that's really positive news as well, because it does take time.
Yes.
And I know it must have been difficult for you at that time. But you look amazing now, and it
Thank you.
sounds like everything is slotting into place for you. And I'm actually going to listen to the album and send
Thank
it to
you.
my daughter because she loves metal.
Oh, great.
And
Thank you.
yeah, because she used to play it on the car, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, let's put some rave on.
Yeah, and I honestly like our metal is we call it accessible metal. It's more like some of the stuff of the early heavy metal in the 80s in of its heaviness. So it's not, sometimes it can almost just be in the hard rock edge. So it's between the two. I sing melodically. I'm classically trained, but I don't sing like an opera singer where a lot of metal singers do. I could, but I choose not to. I actually have a little bit of grit to my voice, and I like to use that. The old school, like Pat
Yeah.
Benatar and Ann Wilson and those kind of people were kind of shaping my vocals back in those days. So
Right.
that's where I'm at. So we kind of have a very unique sound today, and I think it's a good thing. So we're definitely a different kind of metal band today.
Well, I'm going to take a look, and I'm going to put the name of the album in the bio as well, so people
Thank
can go
you.
and take a look and download it.
Thank you.
But do you know, some things just pass through my mind, as it does, because I am a bit neurodivergent, is I was thinking, oh, what kind of song would be classically trained? What song, Amy, could you bring to the table then? Maybe
Yeah.
a kind of, yeah. Who used to sing that song, actually? What's that word? Oh, it's a very grey video. It's kind of heavy metal. It is heavy metal. Wake Me Up.
Oh, yeah. Evanescence. Yeah.
Evanescence, that's the one. Yeah. Would you be able to do something like that?
We kind of, I don't have that voice. I mean, I could, like I said, ours is kind of, gosh, I wish I had somebody really good to compare myself to, because I don't sound like anybody else. I'm a little bit raspier and a little bit more gritty. Like I said, if you listen to some of old Pat Benatar stuff, I'm probably a little bit more like her, but maybe a little bit more grittier than that. But along those lines, she's still my idol. I grew up wanting to be her. So, and I found out she was classically trained, and I was like, I want to be just like that. I need to get voice lessons, Mom, So
That's amazing.
I originally went to school for music when I was younger. And I ended up dropping out to be a rock star. So, but I went back years
As you
later.
do.
That's
But
okay.
it's been amazing having you on the show today, Amy.
Thank you.
And the story that you've gone through kind of touched my heart as well, because I have worked with domestically violent relationships beforehand, and I've seen the impact that relationship has and the understanding of it all. So it must have been a really difficult time for you. But I'm so pleased where you're at now.
Thank you. Like I said, I feel like I've totally come out on the other side of it now, and I'm happy.
And that's all you need.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very happy with my career. I didn't know what would happen trying to get back into the music industry at an older age and doing what I'm doing. Every step that we make that takes us closer to, being a bigger name, it's just amazing to me. I just feel, like I said, blessed every time I see streaming numbers go up. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's another milestone. We are just, and I'm like, I'm so happy.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
That's really good. Well, thank you for coming on the show today, Amy. And I'm looking forward to listening to your music.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. This is a great, I've wanted to tell this story for some time in this aspect. And so this is amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing it with us. Thank you. Thank you for being here and for choosing to be part of this journey today. I believe that together we can create a community where women uplift, support, and empower one another. If this resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to connect more deeply, visit my new website, Coffee Chat, etc. If you feel that you have something you would like to contribute to future episodes, then let me know. You can join our Facebook group, Inspiration Coffee Chat, etc. And please remember that I aim to create a safe and supportive environment for our listeners. But it is important to reiterate, some of these episodes may cover sensitive topics, including discussions around adversity, trauma, mental health, violence, and sexual references. These subjects may evoke strong emotions or trigger responses, and I urge you to seek support or professional help if you're affected by any of them. I want you to leave feeling inspired, motivated, and empowered. For now, it's a see you later, and have a great day wherever you are in the world.